Hey guys, what's going on? Brian Fonseca, Griffin, Whitmer here at the Bryce Jordan Center in State College, Pennsylvania. We just watched Rutgers lose 60-43 to Penn State. Really contentious first half, tight. Rutgers was down 28-23 at the half, but they looked like they can make this a battle to the end. But Penn State just blew the doors wide open at the start of the second half and kind of took control from there. Griffin, general thoughts on the game. What did you see out there? What do you have in your mind after this game?
It really just goes to show how much of a talent gap there is between Rutgers and the rest of the Big Ten. I mean, you saw in the second half, Penn State is just a much more talented team. They're much bigger. They're much more athletic. You know, Rutgers is a really good rebounding team, and they couldn't grab a board for their life, especially in the second half. And Penn State just made shots when it counted. They went on big runs when it mattered. And Rutgers really just didn't have an answer. They just couldn't get anything going on offense, which is becoming a recurring theme, and it's not a good formula to win in the Big Ten.
Lots of bounce off there. I'll start off with the offensive rebounding. One of the Penn State beat writers asked Steve Peichel about it after the game and mentioned that Penn State struggles at times when teams can get offensive rebounds against them, and it was something that Rutgers frankly didn't take advantage of. Mike Watkins is a giant out there, and he really controlled the glass. He sunned Mamadou Decor and Deshaun Freeman at times, and I think he had 19 boards, you said, right? 19 boards, which is just absurd. That's Angel Delgado numbers up there. Moving to the offense, I know you made this a really big part of your piece for Daily Targum. Rutgers is bad, and I think a lot of people know that Rutgers is bad, but Rutgers is really bad on offense.
Yeah, there's not really anything that they're good at. I mean, their one strength, if you wanted to say was a strength, was that they didn't really turn the ball over. In the second half today, they turned the ball over 12 times. They average 11 per game. They had 16 total today. You know, when Issa Cham is not hitting threes early in the game, then they really don't have a shooter. I mean, Corey Sanders isn't a three-point shooter. Geo Baker has been very inconsistent this season. And, I mean, Corey Sanders just 0 for 7 today. Got benched for a good portion of the second half. First game in his career where he didn't even score a single point. So there's just a lot wrong with this offense. You know, they don't have a big man down low that's skilled and that can get buckets. So there's just a lot wrong.
Going off Corey Sanders, I think that's something that a lot of people want to talk about. He had 14 points against Nebraska, but if you look at his stat line, he was 6 for 17, far from efficient. And then tonight was probably his worst game in a Rutgers uniform. I mean, he's had a couple of bad ones, but this was probably the worst one. He looks really frustrated out there, and a tendency that I've noticed, and I think a lot of fans have noticed as well, is he seems to be settling a lot for the crossover mid-range jumper. He's made it his bread and butter, and while it's worked a lot at times, like Seton Hall, that was the pinnacle of him utilizing that mid-range jumper to his advantage. It feels like he's forcing it at times. There were a couple looks where a couple plays where he could have passed the ball to Mamadou Decor or to Shaq Dorson on a pick and roll, who were wide open, but he went for the mid-range jumper, and it kind of just feels like he's forcing things. And I mean, if you have any thoughts on Corey Sanders to add, you can, but I kind of think that a lot of this offensive struggles is because there's no Mike Williams. But before we get into that, anything else you have to add about Corey Sanders?
Yeah, it kind of just feels like he's going into hero ball mode way too early. I'm not going to criticize him for doing this at the end of a game, in a close game, because he's proven that he can make these shots at the end of the game. But when there's 13 minutes left in the first half and your team's struggling to find offensive rhythm, there's no reason to just chuck up like a 19-foot mid-range jump shot with the guy's hand in your face. You know, they're not moving the ball well on offense. They're not getting open looks. I mean, and then I think the other players seem to feed off of that when they notice that Corey is holding the ball a lot. Sometimes guys like Deshaun Freeman will feel compelled to keep the ball because they're afraid they won't get it back, and they wind up chucking up bad shots. And it's just a cycle of bad things happening anytime he starts to go into the mode where he just doesn't want to pass the ball and wants to settle for bad shots.
To be clear, I don't think it's fair to blame Corey Sanders entirely for the struggles of this offense, because frankly, I think he's the best offensive weapon they have, and sometimes, yes, he may feel forced to be that offensive engine. It doesn't excuse him from taking those unnecessary mid-range jumpers, but there is just a lot wrong with this offense that, I mean, at this point, they got to try everything. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's no Mike Williams. I think, personally, that his absence has been a bigger loss than I expected. I didn't think the team would sink this much, but they really miss his leadership. They really miss his shooting. They really miss his energy and the spark that he provides. And is there any way Rutgers can fill this hole, or do you think that it's just something that will have to plague them for the rest of the season?
I think it's something that's going to plague them for the rest of the season. You know, the first game he missed was that game against Ohio State where the team kind of laid an egg. You know, I kind of gave him a pass for that because that game was a Sunday and he got injured on Saturday. So they really didn't know how to adjust without him. And the game after that, when they had time to prepare, you know, they beat the daylights out of Iowa. So you started to think, all right, maybe Steve Pikiell has this figured out. You know, he utilized Matt Bullock for the first time in his career, had Jake Dowdika out there playing significant minutes. So it kind of looked like the team was starting to find an identity in that game. And in the last 3 games, Michigan, Nebraska, and now this, there's just been nothing. And it's not the points, it's not the 10, 11 points per game that he averages. It's that Mike Williams always seemed to just give them something when he came off the bench. He would always make a timely shot, or just the team didn't rebound the ball offensively today, and that's something that he does as good as anyone on the team, despite being like 6'1", 6'2", is that he's not afraid to go up and out-rebound, the forwards and the centers to get offensive rebounds. When he's not in the game, there's no one there to give him that energy, and the team just seemed flat for most of the game today. And if he's out there, he can give them that spark, but there's only so much he can do sitting on the bench watching.
I agree that the timely shot thing is a really big thing. I think that Pikiell, if he were healthy, Pikiell could have put in Williams, and he could have, I'm not saying he would have completely fixed it, but when Penn State goes on that 9-0 run to start the second half, he could have hit a 3 or gotten a layup or gotten an energy offensive rebound or picked up a foul or something. He could have done something that I don't think anyone else on this team could offer. But just kind of wrap things up, kind of a long-winded video. We can kind of go on for a while with this, but just Rutgers has 8 games left in the regular season. To clinch a 500 record, they need to win 4 of those 8 games. They play Illinois twice. I believe Penn State goes back to the rack, and there are winnable games on the schedule. They go to Maryland. And they host Northwestern. There are very much winnable games left on this in Rutgers' slate. Do you think they could go 4 of their next 8? And what do you think they need to do in order to be able to pull out those wins?
I think it should be the expectation that they can win 4 of those games. I mean, it's still a decent team. I mean, they're not a tournament team. They're not an NIT team, but they should be. They're at the point now where they should be beating teams like Illinois. They should beat Illinois twice. The only thing that holds them back is their talent. I think Steve Pikiell is definitely in the upper half of coaches in the Big Ten. It's just a matter of them being able to play consistently at a high level. I mean, if you put a gun to my head and tell me to say yes or no, whether they're going to finish above 500, right now I would probably say no, just based on the way that they've played the last 3 games. There's not many positives to take away from that. I mean, but I'm not saying there's no way. Personally, I just don't think it's possible without Mike Williams. And with the way the offense is playing, it's hard to imagine them winning even 2 more games for the rest of the year.
Is it doable? Yes. Will it happen? I don't think so. I don't think Rutgers has enough offense at all. They're 348th in the country in offensive field goal percentage, in effective field goal percentage, which is, I think you wrote only Coppin State,
Mississippi Valley State,
and there was another team that ended in state. A very bad team that is worse than Rutgers.
There are only 3 teams in the country that are worse offensively than Rutgers, basically.
Yes, per Ken Pom. So, unless the defense is very, very good for Rutgers, but unless it turns into Virginia overnight, I don't think Rutgers could win more than 2 of their next 8 games. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. Who knows? The Big Ten has been an absolute mess this whole season, so it would only be fitting if Rutgers pulls out 4 or 5 wins in the last 8. The first chance to do so is Tuesday away at Illinois. Not the ideal setting. I'm sure they'd like to go back to the rack, but of all the places to go in the Big Ten, I think Champaign is the one they'd pick. So until then, we'll see you guys in the future. For Griffin, Whitmer, I'm Brian Fonseca signing off. Thanks for watching.